Howdy all you delicious people, I am here today to review Shazam! Fury of the Gods. This was actually a fun adventure film I liked. Surprising! A DC film I could actually enjoy watching. So I feel like the first Shazam movie has better story points. And I think certain people can go on and say that this Shazam movie is a mess, but I would go on and feel better overall about this film than I could the first movie because I didn't like the villains. I feel that the first movie does a lot of goofing off, where this movie does go and get to the point a lot more. I am just kind of like where they went with the story. It was fun. So we would come to find that Billy is to seemingly be aging out of his foster home. He is coming up that ripe old age of 18. And so Billy is like, oh no, like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, I guess I should get a job soon. I guess I should try to figure out where I'm going next. We also have quite a good chunk of story being put with Freddy in this movie. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, because I like Adam Brody anyways. So the more that I can see Adam Brody, the happier I am. Because I like that actor anyways. And so now, here's the thing. So there is some cameos, because there's more than one cameo, from other things from the DCU. And I, of course, was to be like, okay, like, there was one cameo where I was just like, huh, about, and there were two others in towards the end credit scenes where I was just like, all right, like, it seems that maybe what the plan is for DCU is they say that it's going to be like a wipe the slate clean reboot of a thing. But then I'm also thinking, like, well, are they just going to instead just kind of cherry pick and go on and be like, oh, no, we're still going to stick with this because I think it still works. We're still going to go on with this because it's still working. And we're also probably going to have to completely do a whole entire Aquaman 2 movie because that movie clearly sucks. People were to go into it for free and still not be interested in the film, which I'm like, Aquaman 2 being a dead fish? Not surprised. But hey, at least I liked this movie. I enjoyed it. It was good. It was fun. Besides a certain cameo, like, I was excited. I was really interested in this one. I liked the villains a lot better than in the first movie, because in the first movie you have the goofy doctor and the Seven Deadly Sins. I'm like, okay, this seems like we're really trying to figure out a way to, like, work these villains in. Where in the sequel, it seems that the villains made a lot more sense. And we had some monstrous, creature-ish character things that I think were really fun. And were to also dip into Greek myths. So I was like, okay, like, this is working. This is interesting. This is good. I'm enjoying. So, with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about this movie. Some people, I think, were also to state on the negative side that this movie is a mess. There's parts of me that can probably state, like, this movie feels very choppy. There are certain scenes where I could have, like, okay, I could have done without that scene. Or I could have gone on without the whole, like, goofy candy thing that they kept trying to sell you in this film. I don't know why that happened. There wasn't, like, a real logo or something that was to be presented somewhere. It felt like they were trying to, like, play for some kind of brand or something, as if somebody was getting some money out of this movie, or giving money to this movie. Yeah, I think I want to just get into spoilers. So with that said, let's just get into spoilers. Let's double fire this bad boy up. The Sisters of Atlas. I think were handled really well here. I might not have gone on and really enjoyed the actors. I might not have been all like excited about like, oh yeah, these actors are going to be put in this film. Ooh la la. Not really. Uh, I assumed that there probably was going to be a showdown of Shazam versus Atlas by the end of this movie because Atlas is an actual character. But instead, it seems we never go that route. And so I'm like, was Atlas used in another movie somewhere, or what's going on? Like, why wasn't Atlas actually used in the film? Because I've seen Atlas being used in like other kind of animated things in the past for DC. So like, Atlas is a character. But yeah, I guess that is what it is. With that said, I think it's about that time to let's double fire this up. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this movie. Some people might have bizarrely liked the first film more than this, but surprisingly, the first DCU thing that I've wanted to grade much higher than anything that has happened in the past. This movie feels better than the first Aquaman movie. This movie goes on and feels definitely better than the last Wonder Woman film. Uh, head above a ton of what is to have been the last Wonder Woman movie. And who knows about that Flash movie yet? I hope I would just be like, oh my god, for that Flash film. But it seems that what we're given so far for that looks to be really interesting. So with that said, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time is about that time we're going to spoil this movie. So we would come into the very beginning of this film, and we have a museum that is to house the Staff of the Gods. It is to be held in this kind of glass case. We all of a sudden have these two armored soldiers that are making their way to this museum piece to try to break it open, as this tour guide is going on and telling these kids about the staff of the gods. And we have, of course, these two soldiers tipping this glass piece over to grab the two pieces of the staff of the gods. So we come to find that these characters end up taking off their helmets, and we realize that these are the two out of the three sisters of Atlas. Because there is a third sister which will come into play in this story. And for, of course, spoilers, hopefully you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we have these sisters who, of course, are to be both Calypso, who is Lucy Liu's character, and Hespera, who is Helen Mirren's character. So we would come to find that in this museum, we would have Calypso, who is whispering sweet nothings into one person's ear, to then have all of a sudden this person go on and infect another, and another, and another, and so on and so forth. It kind of feels like the whole Loki thing, where Loki would go on and poke his staff on a person, and they all of a sudden would be under his control. So we have all these people running around getting infected, and so we kind of have this tourist guide who is kind of begging for his life, as we then go on and have Hespera that goes on to take the statue and go on and turn everybody into the building into one. So they have gotten their powers back, and so we have them kind of make their way to face off against the champion, which he currently is to be seeking out therapy. We have Shazam that is in a therapy session with a doctor, uh, Dario Bava, and Shazam is going on and talking to the doctor, and we have Shazam who is desperately just wanting a lot of his thoughts to just not be in his brain, or to figure out how like Shazam could just better himself. And this doctor is like, well, I work with like pediatrics, I work with like kids. And Shazam is just like, well, yeah, but like it seems that a friend of mine, Billy Batson, kind of recommended you. So, which is kind of ironic. So we have the doctor that's like, well, I think you're suffering from like an image complex and this and that. So for this therapy session, like this thing goes nowhere, to the point of Shazam going on and talking about how he really has to go on and leave. There seems to be a hostage situation that he's going to have to deal with, and the doctor's like, "What? What does he say there?" This movie also does go on and remind me a lot of like Superman 2, if people were to remember the original like Superman 2 movie with the General Zod and the Houston and all that jazz. This movie does go on and kind of remind me quite often of that in this movie. But anyways, we come to find out that the hostage situation that Shazam is actually talking about is him going on and playing video games at his house. So it seems that Freddy is to be kind of overhearing on this radio, and it seems that there is some kind of hotline that people are contacting to get a hold of the Shazam family, and so Freddy knows about that. So we come to find that I think both Billy and both Eugene are both playing these video games. So Billy's like, well, hey, why are we playing these video games? And we have the one kid who's just like, well, hey, yeah, like it's to kind of give us practice for our real life scenarios and just kind of work together and this and that. So Billy goes off to see that Freddy is to hear some feed telling him like, well, yeah, like there is to be like this bridge collapse, and so like, okay, like it looks like it's a beautiful day outside, meaning like, hey, let's get together and let's team up. So we, of course, have both Rosa and Victor, who I believe do not know that any number of these kids are all to be superheroes. And so at some point in this movie, they will have to figure it out, and they will have to be told the truth. And so we come to find that the Shazam family are to head outside all together and all say Shazam, and they fly off to go to the bridge. So we start to find that this bridge is slowly but surely starting to collapse, to where we start to see certain things are buckling, and we go on to have certain people who are just kind of looking at certain pieces are kind of coming off this bridge, and things are starting to drop from certain pieces of this bridge, so on, so forth. So we have, of course, one woman who is listening to the song like I need a hero for the end of the... A lot of people could probably have gone on and either heard this song from the Shrek movie or probably from the Footloose Kevin Bacon film. This song comes on quite often in a number of places. So we would come to find that this doctor woman is to fall, with her car as the bridge is kind of collapsing, and so like the bridge starts to break. She starts to kind of have her car and herself kind of fall, and Shazam luckily like catches her in the perfect time, and he's like, "Oh my god, did I literally just save you while you're listening to this song? How ironic." And I'm like, okay, that was a bit of an eye roll. But anyways, we would come to have Darla, who goes on to save a couple of kittens, and then goes on and saves family members that are to be in this car. We start to see that Mary is saving just a bunch of people and kind of like speed running them from wherever they are to get them to a safe distance. So I had forgotten about Pedro. My bad. Uh, we had Pedro that was with Rosa watching baseball, and it seems that they were talking about Pedro going to the gym, and Pedro was instead, it's like, well, I can see how the gym could be a an interesting thing for me, as Pedro is kind of looking on as he is seeing this kind of athlete that he is kind of eyeing, and we come to find out in this film that Pedro is gay, and I'm like, okay, all right, so like, why do we have to put a person that is to, of course, be gay and talk about them going to the gym in the beginning of this film? I'm just very baffled and confused by that. Moving on. So we have our characters. They are to seemingly free everybody from the gym or bridge and the gym, maybe simultaneously. Not quite sure. Maybe it's a coincidence because maybe on the other side of the bridge there's a gym. I don't know. I messed that up. My bad. We have everybody be freed, and then Shazam goes on and tells his team, okay, guys, like what we have to go on and do now is we have to make sure whatever happens, like this bridge does not collapse. The very next thing we see is the news covering that this bridge had collapsed, and is going on and blaming uh, these Philly natives, the Shazam family, for what they had gone on and done. So we still do not have real legit names for any number of these Shazam characters. We also come to find out that Shazam is actually hated in his own city, which of course is Philadelphia, and we make sure of that when we have the Philly Stadium that is to be used in this film. But so moving on, we have the Shazam family that makes their way to Rock of Eternity, which is to be a door open away. And because, of course, all of the Shazam family, with the exclusion of both Victor and Rosa, who do not have powers, like they can all go to the Rock of Eternity because they're champions. So we have all of them going into the Rock of Eternity, and we start to see that like quite a bit of time has passed, and they have gone on to do quite a bit of redecorating into the Rock of Eternity, and really making fun of a lot of these Deadly Sin characters, and kind of doing all kinds of things with them. So here is where Shazam is wanting to go on and get the team together, but like, well, hey, like, let's kind of review like what we all did at the bridge, and maybe see if there's a way that we can really improve. And the whole rest of the team is just kind of like, yeah, no, you know what, I'm busy, like I got this going on, like I have more important things to do, and they all start to scatter. We start to realize that like Pedro has like a baseball game that he needs to catch, or that Eugene needs to uh, clean himself from all of the goop that he had obtained by continually going through all of the random doors to kind of figure out like what is safe and what is not, and this and that, and just kind of checking what all these doors are, investigating all of them, seeing if they're safe or not. So we also have Freddy, who is seemed to be more focused on these radio calls and seeing like what thing that he could try and take care of. Which the whole like phrase of this family, it's like, well, it's all or nothing, meaning that they should all go together and face off against this crime instead of just doing it all by themselves. So here's where we have a scene where both Shazam and Mary are together, and so like Mary, it seems, is to be close to getting aged out of this family, and so it seems that she's going on and turning to Billy. It's like, well, hey, like you do realize that like the both of us are going to age out soon, and like we should probably start to realize like what we're going to go on and do next. And we had like Mary, who's kind of reading this like organic chemistry book instead of really focusing on this whole team meeting thing. But so Mary goes on and walks off, and Shazam realizes, well, like technically I do have a home. It's the Rock of Eternity. It's gonna be here forever. So there was kind of a joke on that. So we have both the twin Sisters of Atlas, both Calypsa and both Hespera, and they're going on and they are talking to the wizard who is still alive in another realm, it seems. And so since the two sisters have the Staff of Power, they want to go on to force the wizard to say the word Shazam, so that way the staff can be complete. And so, of course, the wizard doesn't want to go on. And this, if you don't realize, this, of course, is the Jaimin, who we would have kind of briefly seen in Black Adam, but of course, who was the mentor of Billy in the first Shazam movie. If I said the word wizard, but I think also there are certain places where they would just have Djaim being called Shazam also. But technically, the wizard did give off his power to Billy to become Shazam, so there could be a huge amount of confusion if I were to state that way. Or it's like, two Shazams? Who is he talking about? So we have the wizard who is in the prison, and so what he does go on forcibly to do, because Calypso does whisper into his ear, is he does go on and say the word Shazam to fix the staff. But then we have the wizard who is to take a sliver from this staff and put it into his finger. So the wizard does turn around and is to pull this little thing from out of his finger, which is freaking gross. And he is to use the power of the staff to just kind of blow this thing away to have someone come and save him. And so that's eventually going to be a thing that we're going to find with Freddy possibly going to be the one working with the wizard at some point in this film. So next up, speaking of Freddy, we would come to find that Freddy is making his way through school, and he accidentally bumps into this girl who's Anthea. And we have all of a sudden these two bully guys, and they are to bump into Freddy, going on and kind of knocking him down. And we have these two bullies that are like, well, hey, Anthea, like, you're new in town and this and that. So we would have Freddy that gets back up and starts mocking these bullies, and it seems that these guys are like, well, hey, like, it seems that Freddy's going to find a new home, and they grab this garbage can. We immediately have Mr. Geckel that is to come in and try to stop these bullies from trashing Freddy. And the guy who is actually Mr. Geckel in this film was to actually be the voice of Batman in Batman Brave and Bold. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like, it's nice to see, like, a certain person that, like, would just kind of get voiceover work and certain other things get to be able to be in a live action scenario that is also to be from that company. And so I'm like, good. Like, a person getting work that I actually like that he's getting work. But then sadly, they end up kind of doing away with the character in kind of a crappy way. But hey, like, you're still getting work, but still. So we have Freddy who's talking to Mr. Geckel, and he says, like, well, yeah, man, like, when I was a kid, like, my all the time was to just be dumped into that trash, so I get it. So we have Freddy who's talking to Anthea, and it seems that more and more, like, that they're talking. It seems that Anthea is really interested in Freddy, and it seems that at some point they are talking about how Anthea was to realize that Freddy was to have been the kid that had spent a lunch with both Shazam and Superman. It's like, yeah. And so we next up go on and transition to Shazam at a restaurant, and it seems to be fine dining. Shazam is going on and noticing how there is to be a big bowl and little food, and Shazam's like, wow, Wonder Woman, you show no expense. So we have a one time where, like, Wonder Woman is to all of a sudden leave, and Shazam is like, wait a minute, like, I get it. Like, more than likely, you want us to just team up together, a dynamic duo, or Shazam, or whichever. And so we've come to find out, while, like, Shazam is seemingly wooing over Wonder Woman, we then get Wonder Woman that turns to Shazam, and we find that the face of Wonder Woman is to be none other than the Wizard, who is desperately talking to Billy and telling him about the Sisters of Atlas and how he is to, of course, be trapped and this and that, whatever have you. So Billy could have gone on and just chucked all of this up to just be some kind of weird and goofy dream. But instead he's like, no, like, it seems that the Wizard is trying to get to me, and so I'm really having to go on and believe that, like, all of this is true. So Billy wakes up from this very goofy dream, and so we're like, okay, like, so we basically did away with Wonder Woman in the same exact fashion that, like, they did away with Superman. But then we would come to find in the later part of the movie, Wonder Woman is actually in the film. Why? I don't know, and I don't even want to know, because I don't really want Wonder Woman to be in a film to make me remember about another film that I did not like at all. That I sat through, and I was like, God, this sucks. AKA 84, or 80 whatever, that stupid film that was just so garbage. It had some good actors in it, but what roles they had to play was freaking garbage. There was no way of saving that film. And why they even decided to put that out made no sense to me. And it seems that Aquaman 2 is failing that same kind of way. So we have Anthea and Freddy that are going to lunch together, and Anthea's like, "Okay, Freddy, like, tell me exactly where you sat that day and what happened." And so Freddy's like, "Oh, okay, well, like, I sat right here, and like Shazam was there, and Superman was there." So Anthea's like, "Wow, like this is great." So we all of a sudden have Freddy who is getting this text, and Anthea's like, "Oh, like, kind of controlling brother," and Freddy's like, "Yeah, like he is kind of just," and Anthea's like, "Well, yeah, I have that too." And so they're like really relating, and they're really starting to click, and things are really working out. And Freddy's like, "Oh, should I kiss this girl right now? Am I gonna go on and like marry this chick? Is it all gonna work out? What's gonna all happen here? Is she even gonna be in the sequel, or are they gonna write her out somehow?" No. So Billy runs off to find Freddy. It's like, "Well, hey man, like I need to tell you about this weird dream." And so Billy goes on and pulls Freddy aside and is to tell him like, "Hey man, like I had spoken to the wizard and he's talking about the Sisters of Atlas, and I don't know what that is, but we're gonna have to figure it out. We're gonna have to Google or something." So we then have all the team make their way back to the Rock of Eternity, and we come to find that Pedro, if they don't know exactly like where exactly to look for the Sisters of Atlas, then Pedro is to come up with a part of the Rock of Eternity that can actually give them this answer. So they end up finding that there is a secret passage that opens to this kind of library, and we come to find that there is to be this kind of pencil or utensil like thing that is just continuing to nonstop write, as if this kind of pencil thing is to have a mind of its own, and it's to be a thing that they end up all calling Steve. Which I'm like, okay, that is the goofy part of this film, but hey, when really looking at it, I I guess I can just be okay with that. There could have been some other goofier things that they could have went with this, but at least this seems like reasonably goofy. To have me just feel like, okay, like it could have been a lot worse. But so, anyways, we come to find that this Steve character, whenever someone is to like be saying like, hey, like write this message, this Steve character writes everything that these people are saying, even when they would naturally assume to not have this character write this. To have at certain points where Shazam is to tell like Steve, hey, write this, and then he like writes this, and Shazam is like, no, 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 scrap that piece of paper and actually write these things. So we would come to find that when they ask about the Sisters of Atlas, we have Stephen who is to write out a certain set of books for them to go on and find. So they find these books, they start looking into it, and so they start to realize that the books eventually all tie into the Staff of the Gods, but they probably don't realize that right away. But then they also to realize that, like, wait a minute, like the wizard is in this book, and so they start to tie it all together. It's like, well, wait a minute, like what happened to the Staff of the Gods, the staff that you had before? And Shazam is like, well, I broke it in half and I just left it there because I didn't think that anybody would need it. And so, like, oh my god, you're stupid, like, that you just left this thing because, like, somebody could go on and just figure out how to fix it back together. Kind of like how Thor in what was it, Infinity War, went on to figure out how he could make another hammer, kind of the same thing. So we come to find them kind of look through all these books and start to put the pieces together and start to figure things out. Maybe not completely, but like they get the gist of it. So we then go on and have Freddy and we have Anthea, and they're on this rooftop at the school. So we have, of course, Anthea, who is kind of talking more and more about the superheroes here, and I'm like, there's something fishy about this girl, and I think I'm kind of putting my finger on it, but not exactly. And plus, we also find while they're looking for the Sisters of Anthea that they're or the Sisters of Atlas, that we come to find that there are three sisters, and so one of the sisters seemingly in the book is to be called Anthea, so it's like, okay, like we're realizing that Anthea is to have been one of these sisters, and we come to find out that that's true. Excuse me, that Anthea is to go on and have this certain set of power, which I thought was kind of interesting, but also it kind of feels like a Doctor Strange kind of power, where we would have like Doctor Strange who has this like certain goofy ability to where he would go on and kind of adjust all these buildings and shift them, and like it would kind of be like Inception for those films. We kind of have this person who is to have like somewhat similar powers here, where it seems that she can adjust the world around her. And when Shazam comes flying in, like that's where we start to see that power coming into place. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So we have Anthea that is talking to Freddy about like, well, hey, uh, like, like you've actually met this team before. It seems like you're friends with them, and so Freddy's like, well, hey, like I can have you meet one of them if that's what you really would like to do. And Anthea's like, really? That sounds wonderful. So, uh, we come to find that Freddy is to give himself like this goofy name of Mr. Everypower, and or Captain Everypower. And so I'm like, man, like they're giving these characters like the lame freaking goofy names that of course they're not going to stick with. And so like I guess at some point they're just kind of have to forcibly like realize that they have to give these characters code names. But I think in the past there was always like Captain Marvel Jr. and this and that and all these other goofy like things that they would probably have to like figure out a way to name all these characters, but like maybe they're just not going to ever name them, or maybe just call them all Shazams or whatever. The Shazams, yeah, that would be an interesting title. But so, anyways, maybe they'll call them Avengers, because joke by the end of the film. So we would come into uh, Freddy, that is to state that he knows Mister or Captain Everypower, and so it's like, well, hey, I can kind of bring him here, and Anthea's like, could you? And so we then have Freddy, who is to turn into this character, and then he kind of flies up from the other part of the building, and so Anthea's like, oh my god. So we have uh Super Freddy, and that's what I'll call him. And we have the other sisters that come in, and they start using their powers on Freddy, as Freddy's like, well, hey, like you're in trouble now. And so he ends up saying the word Shazam again, but realizes that his powers are gone. So we have Shazam that, of course, is flying in, and this is where we have Anthea, who's kind of using all these buildings to adjust, and Shazam, who is just realizing that all these buildings are kind of coming at him, and he's not realizing like where they all are at. He's just trying to fly faster to hope that he can get to Freddy in time. So we come to find that uh, Shazam kind of like smashes into this building because of Anthea's power, and so Captain Everypower. That was his name. So we go on to come to find out that the sisters are to kind of place this dome on the city. And so we come to find that the sisters are going to take Freddy and dump him with the wizard in this other realm. And so that's, of course, when Freddy meets the wizard, and we kind of have jokes with both the wizard and Freddy. I think the wizard goes on and calls Freddy like Phoebe, and Freddy's like, "My name's not Phoebe." It's just kind of really goofily, like not really knowing who either one of these characters really are, or kind of making fun of them, like, "Man, you look really old," or "You look really this," "You look really disheveled." So we have to realize that the Shazam team is going to need to try and figure out some way to get a letter to the Sisters of Atlas, to try and make some kind of arrangement or to try to do some negotiations. And so they end up using Steve, because it seems that there is somehow where they can kind of make a letter that can make their way to where the sisters are. So we have the Shazam team going on and making a letter, and so while that's going on, we come to find out that the Sisters of Atlas are desperately wanting to try and get to the seed of life. And that bizarrely is to come in an unusual manner. That is to kind of be working with the whole like Adam and Eve story. But we'll get to that soon. And especially if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So their plan is to concoct the seed of life. So while we have both Freddy and the Wizard who are to go on and be forced to talk to the sisters, because the sisters want to know the names of the Shazams, and they want Freddy to give up this information. And so we have Calypso that is to whisper sweet nothings into Freddy, and bizarrely, even then, Freddy won't give up the information, and Calypso's like, wow, that's strange. Like, you would have thought he would have given it up right away, but he doesn't. So we would have them realize that it's like, okay, well, like, it seems that this letter is to be dropped off, and we end up having Hespera that is to read the whole entire note, as the Shazam team is to state all these things that they probably shouldn't have stated in this letter. They're talking about Gatorade, and oh yeah, I like a red Gatorade. And so we have Calypso, who is asking Freddy, it's like, what is this Gatorade? What power does it hold? And this and that. So they write all these kind of things in this letter, even then, and Hespera is reading it all off, because again, this is somewhat like Superman 2, where we of course have these characters that don't really understand anything that's really going on, and and we also realize that the Shazam team is stupid also. So since the sisters are going to meet up with the Shazam team, they're like, well, what do we need Freddy and Wizard for? Let's go on and feed them to Ladon. And so we come to find out that Ladon is the huge dragon that we end up going on and seeing uh, in the trailers. So Ladon is to be this guardian, and so uh, we have, of course, when Freddy and the Wizard make it to Ladon, they realize that this thing is to channel their fear, so much so that they're realizing, like, man, like we're gonna die, from this thing easily. And by the time that they are being in threat of Ladon, we come to find that Anthea saves them, and she's like, well, you know what, I don't like what they're doing, and plus also, like, she really likes Freddy, and so because what it seems that the sisters are planning, that instead of just trying to revive their I don't know, by taking their seed of life and putting it in another realm or another place or something to kind of revive what had died before, it seems that the sisters are going to go on and use the seed of life and put it on Earth and kind of renew their resources on Earth. And Anthea's like, well, I don't like that. Like, I don't think that's right. So Anthea, who has spent some time on Earth anyways, is to really enjoy Earth. So, anyways, so we come to find that uh, Shazam is to meet up with Hespera, and so he has all these like kind of burgers and these drinks, and we come to have this one guy who's just like, well, hey, like, Shazam, what are you gonna do about that dome? And Shazam's like, well, I don't know, I'm trying to like make this kind of negotiation about it right now, and so like, I don't know about that. So I don't really trust you, Shazam. You Philly Fledges or Philly Fools or whatever that they call this team, whatever. So we go on to come to find out that Hespera is going to meet with Shazam, and it seems that they're kind of talking things out. But what's really going on in here is that they're wanting to try and power down the Shazam family and kind of take their powers. So when the Shazam team starts coming in, we have like Calypso that is to take Pedro's power, and then we have both feels like I missed something. Here we go. No, that doesn't seem right either. Great. Cue up whatever it is I missed somewhere. Let me pause here for a second. Here we go. So Pedro loses his power. We had, of course, Shazam is talking about how he loves the Fast and Furious movies. because of course they are to talk a lot about family, and then all of a sudden all of the trigger word here is family, and then we go on to have the Shazam family that arrives, and here's where we start to get the this fight out that is happening, where Pedro loses his powers. We go on to have Calypso that is to be thrown by both Darla and Eugene. Hespera attacks both Darla and Eugene. We have Shazam that goes on and tries to attack Hespera. They kind of go into this kind of underground kind of it looks like kind of like an underground like back room or kind of like freight location. So because there's just a bunch of boxes here, they're all like plastic wrapped and fork and palletized and whichever. So we have Shazam and Hespera who are kind of getting some good fights in. It seems that Shazam is to go on and try to take down Hespera pretty well. Then Hespera, eventually after both Mary and Darla come down and try to take out Hespera, and they think like, oh, we've beaten her. But then Hespera comes back and is to tie up Mary and Darla, and is to go on and just start tossing Shazam around. We have Hespera where she's starting to get this like big, huge rock of things, and Shazam is telling like Hespera, it's like, well, hey, like, do you have super speed? And so Shazam kind of switches things around, and Hespera ends up getting hit with this big boulder thing. And so we come to have Shazam, who is to grab Hespera and kind of toss her in a cage in the rock of eternity, and is to say, ha 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 ha, like, well, like, you're gonna be kind of in here for a very long time, like, have fun with that, because only champions can go on and enter into the rock of eternity, and Calypso is not a champion, and also like, you aren't going to get out of here. So we come to find out that Hesperida can get out of this cage, and she had wanted to come to the Rock Eternity for good reason. So we we also had the Shazam family, who is to toss kind of Hesper over Shazam's shoulder, and they head into a porta potty, which I thought was kind of fun. By the time the Calypso opens up the porta potty, there's some guy like, "Hey, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing?" So I thought that was kind of interesting, and that was kind of funny. It's a funny little joke. So, when they go on and realize that Hesperida had gotten out of her cage, we have Mary that goes on and states, well, hey, like, she wanted to get caught on purpose. So, back with the Wizard and Freddy, we come to find out that that Hesperida had gotten this golden apple from the Shazams and had left to make her way back to her realm. And so Wizard and Freddy are to realize what's going on with the sisters, and so the Wizard is kind of cluing Freddy in on the golden apple, and that it's all tied to the Adam and Eve story, and we of course want the sisters, who are again tempted to put together the tree of life, is what the is what they're trying to put together here. The tree that can go on and kind of revitalize what they had lost in the past. They had lost their father. They had lost their mother. So we would go on to, of course, have the Shazam family that are to realize that they need to go through all of the doors and know where all of them are heading. So we start to have the Shazam family who are kind of testing the doors that Eugene hasn't already tested. So we have Calypso and the sisters talking, and so they're talking about how the seed will restore their realm, and all while Freddy is trying to steal the apple back, and the wizard is like, well, hey, maybe I should go on, and these are like horrible, and they kind of crick every time you move. So, like, obviously Freddy should be the better choice here. So Freddy goes on and is to steal the apple, but by the time he goes on to get right to the base like thing, the thing that is holding up this apple, Freddy drops the thing that is holding up this apple, and it makes a loud noise for the sisters to immediately look at Freddy. So we come to find that there is bizarrely a violin that is on fire, and all the sisters are to see this, and they're like, why is this violin on fire? And Shazam's like, I don't know either, but it was in a rock of eternity. And so I'm wondering if somehow that like flaming violin is gonna play into something later on. Cause I'm like, what is that gonna not be like some kind of goofy mess up that Shazam did? Because these characters had no clue what the flaming violin was. But so Shazam is to distract these sisters good enough to try and face off against them. And so we also have at a point where Freddy is to realize that he can take his crutch and touch the staff of power and regain his power back. So we go on to have, of course, the apple that is to then be kind of like handle kind of do it kind of does like a keep away thing where we have some of our characters just trying to toss off this apple, especially when characters start to lose their powers. So we go on and have all the Shazam family who are rushing out of from where they came, because we now have the sisters who are trying to go on and use Ladon to go after the Shazam family here. So the Shazam family is running out of their own house as they have to go on and they have to wake up Victor and Rosa and try to tell them like, hey man, like you need to get out of this house because this dragon is coming. And so the dragon ends up kind of breaking through this entire home. Like, oh no, like how is that gonna like horribly make our characters now have to realize that like they have to go on and maybe either rebuild a house or they're gonna have to go on and like find another place to live for the sequel film. But it seems that in this movie they are to make quick work because there's a whole family of superheroes. So they make quick work of the house, and so I'm assuming it's probably gonna be a home that either looks better than what the previous one was, or it's going to be looking roughly the same. Because heaven forbid you change anything in these films. So we have the dragon that is chasing off against his family. So we eventually have it where all of the members of the Shazam family are to lose their powers besides Mary. And so Mary is holding on to the apple, and we come to find that there's a point where uh, Calypso with Ladon, as she's riding the dragon, and we had a disagreement between all three of these sisters, and there, of course, is to be one point where there's such a disagreement that we would go on to find that Calypso goes on and stabs Hespera, and Anthea goes on to use her powers to kind of run away from Calypso. But yeah, like that at some point is gonna just happen in this film. And then eventually we would come to find Calypso, who is to take away the powers of Anthea. And so yeah, so but anyways, we have Mary, who is to be grabbing onto this apple, and because of Calypso, Calypso is to have Mary lose her powers, and so she's falling in the air. Luckily, we go on and see this family who is looking on. It's like, oh my god, Mary, she's falling. And we go on to have Billy, that is, or Shazam, that goes on and flies off to catch her. And like, there's something about both Mary and Billy that I really can't quite put my like finger on it. Like, I get it that they're family, but there's just something about the two of them that is just kind of like there's something just kind of going on between the two of them, and I don't. What is that? What is that? I'm very confused. So we would then go on to have Calypso, who is to make her way to the Philly Stadium, and she is to make the Tree of Life and bring it there. And we start to see that this tree is completely destroying this entire stadium, I guess. We might come to find that DC might not be Phillies fans. I don't know what it is. It's kind of weird. So we would come to find that this tree is wreaking havoc all over Philly. And what ends up coming from these kind of weird, goofy creature eggs was actually just so cool. I like that. So we have this massive tree that emerges. And so we have Anthea and we have Freddy, who are going on and talking. And so Anthea is telling Freddy that it's well, I think it's my time. If I have to go on and completely give up my powers to stop all this, I think that's what I'm going to have to do. We have Anthea, who goes on and tells Freddy that she's 6,000 years old, and she feels like if it's time, it really is time. And I think it was kind of funny when Shazam would kind of crack the joke about how, like, the girls, like, it seems like don't have, like, consistent ages. Like, they're all sisters, but, like, they're all wildly, like, different ethnicities, like, different like age ranges, and so it's like very like very much a thing that for Shazam just doesn't quite make sense. So evidently Shazam really doesn't know much about Greek mythology, because in all honesty, there of course is to be a number of different people that Zeus had slept with, and eventually had like demigods and Hercules and all these other things. Whereas if Zeus just slept with like 100 different people, or 100 different women, and created all of these demigods and like the Dionysuses and the Hercules and the Mephistopheles and all kinds of stuff. I'm not sure about that last one, but anyways. So, uh, we have Shazam that is going on and having to be the only one with powers left. And so Shazam is going to figure out some way to come up with a strategy to beat uh, what eventually will only be Calypso here. But we have, before he does that, almost have Shazam wanting to give back his power to the wizard, and the wizard's like, no, like, you may not go on and have like the wisdom, but like your heart is very wise. So you need to come up with something. You need to fight for your people, and like you are my champion. Uh, like to go on and find you, there had to have been some reason for that, and like. We just kind of have like this whole moment kind of becoming similar to like the Green Lantern movie where like we have to come to realize that at some point that Hal Jordan, Ryan Reynolds' character, like there had to have been a reason why the Ring had chosen him. And so like we go on to have Ryan Reynolds who is to tell like the Guardians like, well, hey, like let me fight for my planet uh and like just give me a chance and I'll come up with something like I'll outsmart it and I'll win. And Sinestro is like, well, hey, like we just had a squadron of lanterns that failed to fight this, and it's like, well, yeah, but like, bro, I'm Hal Jordan. I'm the title guy. So yeah, so we almost kind of find that to be the same scenario where we almost have like the Shazam family that tries to go up against this threat and it loses most of the team's power with the exclusion of Shazam. So moving on. So Shazam's like, okay, like so we start to realize that there's these kind of egg-like things kind of cropping up all around the stadium, and we start to realize that there are certain monsters that, of course, are coming out of them. We come to find that there are to be creatures like the Manticore, which is to be this kind of lion with wings, and it has a scorpion for a tail. We have harpies that are coming out of certain other egg-like things. We have the Minotaur. We have the Cyclops. And so we have all these monsters are kind of one by one kind of like popping out here. So we go on to have both Rosa and Victor that are getting in the battle wagon. It's like, well, hey, let's go on and let's figure out something to do here. And they're like, well, why are we calling it the battle wagon? Why are we calling the van that? And it's like, I don't know, like let's get into the spirit of things. So that's when we have all the sisters who are starting to conflict with one another. And here's where we get Hespera that is dead, and Anthea is to lose her powers because Calypso is like, no, like I'm just gonna kind of wipe out all my other sisters and kind of want all the power for myself. So Anthea becomes human. So we all of a sudden have all these mythical creatures that are fighting all these people in town. We all of a sudden have the Manticore that ends up getting hit by the battle wagon. And so we have Victor who turns to all the kids and he's like, okay, like I can only hit all of these mythical creatures with my van like so often. We have to come up with something else. So we go on to have them realize like, well, hey, like we can probably go on and ask Steve for an answer of how we can defeat these things. And so Steve starts writing that they really just need to go on and find a unicorn. And they're like, well, hey, like unicorns don't really make sense either. And so they're like, well, hey, all we also need is some kind of ambrosia to kind of have the unicorns kind of fight along with us. And it's like, okay, where are we going to find ambrosia? We come to find out in the early part of this movie, we had Darla, who was kind of really annoyed with Mary because Mary's just a bickering old biddy, even though she's fairly young. And so we have, of course, Mary then ends up getting Skittles in her pocket, and she ends up getting upset with Darla for putting Skittles in her pocket. So Victor is talking to Darla. It's like, well, yeah, like, I guess she's a real pain, huh? And Darla's like, well, yeah, why do you think I put Skittles in her pocket? So, we end up, I guess, just having, like, Darla, who just bizarrely just loves Skittles, and why doesn't anybody? I think I like to go on and have, like, the wild berry, like, the purple bag of Skittles, or the sour ones. I could also just like the classic Skittles, but that's just me. But I think I would much rather have like either the sour ones or the wild berry ones. The purple bag. But anyways, rather than the tradish. So anyways, more than likely the sour ones, because if you haven't had the sour Skittles, you're missing out. You're definitely missing out. So it's like I'm trying to sell you on a product that you don't care about. Like maybe this movie, I don't know, we'll figure that out. So we go on to, of course, have Shazam, who is to fight off Ladon, and there's of course some really interesting fight out between Shazam and Ladon, and we have them kind of crashing through this building. And so we would start to find out when Shazam is to use its like electrical attacks against Calypso, he starts realizing like, wait a minute, like it seems that staff is to seemingly be some kind of like battery, and the more and more that I just kind of put my energy in it, the more I'm starting to realize that it's just charging it up. And so he's like, maybe there's something I can use with that. So we have the wizard and the kids who are to make their way to the unicorn. And so when the unicorn, it seems like, and starting to like getting close to the kids, we come to find that Darla is to go on and just toss a bunch of Skittles all over the ground, and is to tell the unicorn, it's like, taste the rainbow. And so the unicorn goes on and starts eating all of the Skittles, and it seems like, all right, like let's take down these freaks. Like, let's take down these creatures, these monstrous things. And so they're like, oh my god, like, all right, like this unicorn is working with us. And so we start to see all the other unicorns. And so Mary's like, well, I guess we're going to need a bigger bag of Skittles, it seems. Like, as if we're going to need a bigger boat or whatever. So we go on to then start to have the unicorns that are going on and, like, putting their horns into minotaurs and forcing them to all run off, all these creatures. So, kind of putting the boots to them. So we have Shazam that eventually, after starting to face Calypso, he like runs off because he realizes there's nothing he can do to right now figure out a way to beat this woman. So he runs off, and so Calypso's like, I knew you'd run, you Shazam you. So Shazam runs off to go back to Hespera, who he realizes he realizes that she's seemingly dead. So he's like, oh, okay, well, like, how can I go on and bring her back to life? So he realizes that he can technically, with his powers, like, defib her. And again, like, at some point in this movie, I was also, like, thinking, like, this being Thor Ragnarok, where I was just kind of waiting, like, for someone to go on and tell Shazam, it's like, you're the god of what again? Sparklers. So we have Shazam that starts like zapping Hespera, and she's like, "I'm okay, like stop zapping me. Like if I am really gonna die, like please don't go on and keep zapping me." So we have Shazam who is laying out to Hespera his plan. It's like, well, hey, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna need your help for this also. So we come to find that Anthea is to figure out where Ladon and Calypso are. And so when there's a time where Ladon, it seems, is starting to fight against these people, we have these police officers who are having these machine guns, and they're brrr, 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 and they're starting to fire into this dragon, and it's doing nothing. We come to find that Andrea is to try and use her power to try and save these people, and of course, she then realizes that her powers are gone. So we have Calypso who is to see Anthea, and it's like, oh, okay, well, like since she's human now, I'm going to kill her off. So the Dawn is going on to kind of use his like Godzilla like power and is like, hey, and starting to like go on and like breathe very hard into Anthea, but his breath is like weirdly blue and into the blue, making Anthea fill with fear. And so we all of a sudden have Freddy come to find where Anthea is, and he goes on to like fight against Ladon, and it is getting closer and closer to Anthea, and they are both together. And so Anthea is like, well, I don't have my power. And Freddy is like, well, like, you're more than just your power, somewhat, to kind of tell her, it's like, you're stronger than you realize. So we then come to find that Shazam is to go on and grab the tail of the dragon, which is to, of course, get this dragon to stop doing what it's doing. So we have Shazam that goes on, makes fun of the dragon and how the dragon is technically made out of wood and all kinds of goofy other things. So Shazam is making these jokes about the dragon. And so, while Calypso is a little bit distracted when Shazam is to tell, like, both Freddy and Andrea not to do anything, and then Calypso's like, what? We have Shazam that grabs the staff from Calypso, and he's like, man, like, I've done this, like, twice to you guys now, like, God, you guys just look like you have eggs on your faces. So we have Shazam that takes the staff and runs off to the stadium. And so we, of course, have Ladon and Calypso that are chasing after them. So while Shazam and Calypso are at the stadium with the dragon, we have Asperida that goes on and puts the shielding over the dome. And so Calypso is going and talking to Hesperida, and Hesperida is like, well, hey, as soon as, or as long as I'm alive, so will this dome. And so the Dawn is trying to blast into the dome to try to weaken it, but it won't. So we have Shazam that is going on and talking to his family one last time, realizing that he's going to more than likely die here. And I'm like, oh man, like, this is actually going into a good progression of story. This is freaking awesome. Like, to basically state, like, Shazam is the only one left with powers, and so it makes all the sense in the world for him to do this possible sacrifice play. And so I'm like, alright, like, they really just kind of cleverly put this story together. I'm so, like, happy about how all this kind of eventually plays out, to where it's not like a 7-on-1 scenario or some goofy thing, or whichever. So we come to find out that Shazam is talking to Freddy, and Freddy ends up putting together, like, well, hey, like, this is all or nothing. It's like, well, yeah, like, Shazam is like, uh like none of like yeah, it is all or nothing. Like none of my family will be hurt, and like all it'll take is just me fighting off against this foe. So we go on to have all of our bits of family going on and saying their goodbyes as they realize that Shazam is probably going to die here and do the sacrifice play. So Shazam goes in and is to continue to just bounce around all this electricity in this dome. And so we would come to find that Shazam is to uh, kind of continue to kind of punch around uh, with of course Calypso. Then we get to a moment where Shazam gets the staff back, and so while the dragon is like breathing its fire into the staff, we then have Shazam that dips under, and then is to go on and do the sacrifice play where Shazam kind of pushes both the dragon, both Calypso, and the tree all together, just kind of pushes them all together, and then Shazams, and we have all this lightning that is all around. And so, like, when this hits, this wipes out seemingly everything now. So we come to find that Hespera, she dies. We have Calypso, she dies. We go on to then have all of the Greek creatures. They all just die. The tree dies, and so all the people are going on back into the dome and trying to find Shazam. They're trying to find Billy. They're trying to find something. So we go on to have Freddy, who eventually is to find where Freddy is, and then the rest of the group are still looking for him, and they're like, oh no, he's over here. So we have Freddy, who is kind of smacking Billy, and it's like, yeah, this is where you wake up. This is where you tell me you're okay, and you're messing with me, and it's not happening. And so Freddy is starting to cry, and I'm just like, oh no, like, we've lost this character. And so we then go on to find out somehow, I don't know how, because they don't really have the power to do any of this, but we come to find our characters in the Valley of the Gods. And we come to find that the wizard, as well as the kids, had gone on to bury Shazam in the Valley of Gods. And so we would come to find out that it's like, well, like, is there any possible way for this character to somehow maybe get resurrected? And so they go on and they talk about, like, well, there could be a spark of the gods, but, like, there is no god that we probably would know of that is here conveniently right now that could possibly do this. And then all of a sudden, Wonder Woman shows up, and I'm like, no. Why? Like, they could have come up with, like, some kind of other goofy thing. Like, any other freaking thing could have just, like, we could have had anything that could have came up besides this. But it's the only real, like, god-like thing that is close enough. And so, yeah, so Wonder Woman comes in, I'm like, no, that. So Wonder Woman comes in, and so she is to respark things. Anthea is to get her powers back. We have Shazam, who is to break from the ground, and he's like, oh my god, you guys, like, buried me. You like really? So he gets from his grave. So we come to find out that everything is copacetic, everything is okay, everything is seemingly back to normal on the good side of things. And so when Shazam ends up getting back from his grave, he's like, "Well, hey guys, like all you guys want your powers back because we can do that now." So they're like, "Yeah, I want my power. I want my power." Oh yeah, because we come to find that Wonder Woman is to give the Wizard back his staff, and so he is back to kind of full power now. So we then go on to showcase next that the house is to go on and get completely remodeled. It seems that, I'm sure with there being a superpower team here, that this house is going to get remodeled fairly quickly. So we then come to find out that there has to be one more person that kind of shows up by the end of this film, and we come to find out that the Wizard is to be a lot more clean cut and is to have this much more goatee instead of this whole big huge like God, what is his name? Idris Elba from Thor Ragnarok. He looked very much like that guy. Heimdall. He looked very much like Heimdall from Thor. So we had the Wizard who is going on and telling everybody, it's like, well, hey, like, instead of just being locked away in the Rock of Eternity, like, I'm going to go on and do some adventuring. And so I thought I would go on and say goodbye to you all before I go. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, man, go on and just have some fun, man. Just kind of do whatever you're going to do. So we end up having him say goodbye. This is kind of the wrapping up the film and so on and so forth. So we now have to go on into end credit scenes. And so for the end credit scenes, we come to find that Shazam is meeting up with characters who, of course, are very familiar if you had gone on and seen the show Peacemaker. Because we come to find out that Agent Harcourt and John, who of course I would call Diebeard from the Peacemaker show, are to both meet up with Shazam, and they are interested in having Shazam become part of the Justice Society of America. If you don't know who that is, you would have had to have gone on and seen the movie Black Adam. And if you have not gone on and seen Black Adam, I guess this would probably give you maybe a quite possible interest in checking that out. It's an okay movie, but also we come to find out that like Black Adam will not continue from off of that, because that was to, of course, not be a successful thing. Man, they are just, for the DCU, they are just really going back to stuff that was not successful at all. The JSA that was from the Black Adam movie, not successful. The Wonder Woman last film, not successful. But they're having these things be sold in current product. What kind of Einstein thing was that to just think up, right? What an idea that was. So we have, of course, this is where Shazam makes fun of like the team name. It's like, Justice Society America, like, how about you just call it like Avengers name or something like that? So like, ha 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 ha, that's funny. You might as well call it Thor Ragnarok, because that's what you kind of made this movie to be similar like. And so we then also have a second end credit scene where we have Dr. Sivana that is going on and kind of scribbling nonsense all over these prison cell walls, because we find out that that's what he was doing via the last film, and there was no continuation from his character being reused in this sequel movie, and maybe there never will be. I don't know. And so we have Dr. Silva, or Sivana, that is going on, and again, talking to the same bug-like character who is Mr. Mind, and it seems that we might head somewhere with these characters. Supposedly, with what I was to have heard, there was a plan for these two characters, Dr. Savannah and Mr. Mind, to have possibly figured out a way to get the villains in uh, this story to be a thing. But I guess they scrapped that at the last possible minute. And so that's kind of a little tidbit thing. I think, in all honesty, we might end up using these characters at some point, maybe like how eventually like Lex Luthor was used in the later like Superman films, where like he is to be kind of these kind of this character that kind of invents the monster, but maybe doesn't get his hands dirty anymore. Like maybe that'll be those two characters for the coming Shazam films, where they might go on and kind of be these kind of like men behind the curtain kind of thing for the real show to just kind of keep going on, and they might have some connection to it or whichever. But anyways, I'm going to try and get out of here. Holy crap, this took an hour and a half. Oh my god. Why did I take that long? Because I know it's like an hour and 50 minutes, or like it's almost like 2 hours. But either way, I'm going to say that I'm going to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I forgot about. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this film, and whichever. But I'm going to go on and try to get out of here because this has already run too long anyways. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.